Alarming announcement. The world reacts to North Korea's claims it has detonated a hydrogen bomb. Symbolic repeal. After a dozen tries, a congressional repeal of Obamacare will finally reach the president's desk. Traditional feast. Colorful celebrations of the Epiphany of our Lord in Rome and elsewhere in the world. And dim statistics. While polls show most millennials have a negative view of religion, there are bright spots. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, January 6th, 2016. Good evening from Washington. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick. North Korea sparks international fury. The reclusive country claims it has detonated a hydrogen bomb. Tonight, we explain the gravity of this development, and we see how the world is responding to the threat. Chief White House correspondent and political director Lauren Ashburn begins our team coverage.
The news exploded around the world this morning, many questioning whether North Korea actually detonated a hydrogen bomb. The White House says it isn't buying the claim. North Korea trumpeted its H-bomb of justice test, issuing this statement. Make the world look up to our strong nuclear country and Labor Party by opening the year with exciting noise of the first hydrogen bomb. The White House dismissed the claims.
The initial analysis that's been conducted of the events that were reported overnight is not consistent with North Korean claims of a successful hydrogen bomb test.
Washington has been skeptical about past claims. A group that monitors nuclear tests said this blast was equivalent to less than 10,000 tons of TNT.
As we all know, North Korea's provocation is a complete violation of Security Council resolutions and a serious challenge to world peace and security.
South Korea called the test a grave provocation. China says it will summon North Korean officials to condemn the attack. And Japan called it a grave threat to the safety of our country. After an emergency session, the UN Security Council presented this as a clear violation of Council resolutions and said it would begin work immediately on new sanctions. Secretary of State John Kerry has reached out to his counterpart in South Korea, and the Deputy Secretary of State will be traveling to the region next week. At the White House, I'm Lauren Ashburn, EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you, Lauren. North Korea's claims of a successful hydrogen bomb test stirs up debate in the race for the White House. Wyatt Goolsby joins us with reaction from presidential candidates.
Brian, as you can imagine, candidates are putting a political spin on North Korea's nuclear testing. Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton says the U.S. and its allies need to immediately impose additional sanctions against North Korea, but several GOP candidates are pointing the blame at Clinton as former Secretary of State and at the Obama administration.
It's reckless what's happened under this administration and what happened under Hillary Clinton's watch at the State Department.
And this underscores the gravity of the threats we are facing right now and also the sheer folly of the Obama-Clinton foreign policy. When we look at North Korea, it's like looking at a crystal ball. This is where Iran ends up if we continue on this same misguided path.
I think we need to reimpose sanctions across the board. This is a huge danger, and if they have the long-range missile capability to deliver that weapon, that is a direct threat to the United States.
Presidential candidates on both sides of the aisle have talked about the U.S. beefing up its missile defense system. GOP frontrunner Donald Trump held off on bashing Clinton on this issue. Instead, he blames China, saying if China wanted to, they could stop North Korea from conducting nuclear tests. Brian?
All right, Wyatt, thank you. Now, you may wonder why North Korea's alleged hydrogen bomb is more serious than its earlier atomic bomb tests. Well, it comes down to explosive power. You see, an atomic bomb uses fission to split plutonium into smaller atoms. A hydrogen bomb is even bigger. It uses fusion to combine smaller atoms like hydrogen. That causes an explosion thousands of times bigger than the atomic bombs used against Japan. A hydrogen weapon is actually two bombs in one. It uses an atomic explosion to trigger the bigger hydrogen blast. Rachel Wagley is with the National Bureau of Asian Research. Sarah Westwood is a reporter with the Washington Examiner. Good to have both of you with us. Rachel, is it enough for the U.S. simply to denounce this provocation, or do we have to do more?
Yeah, absolutely not. What we've seen time and time again since 2006 are sanctions, resolutions, and statements. And what we've also seen time and time again, this is now the 4th time, is another nuclear test. Essentially, we're giving North Korea a scot-free, get-out-of-jail-free card for every time it launches a new test. And we're eroding South Korea and the U.S.'s credible deterrence against future tests.
This is serious business. How does it change the approach of candidates on the campaign trail, Sarah?
You know, it's not changing the debate so much as deepening an existing narrative circulating among GOP candidates that Obama has left a leadership vacuum in the world and that chaos is filling the spaces in Syria and Libya. So candidates, as you just saw, doubled down on these talking points that Hillary Clinton and Obama are responsible for this chaos that you see around the world by backing out of conflict areas.
But they'll probably be avoiding this kind of the tit-for-tat stuff that's been going on to talk about more serious issues here.
You would think. I mean, we were starting to see people talk about Marco Rubio's boots and wondering about Ted Cruz's birth certificate. So this sort of brings discourse back to a more serious place.
Puts things into perspective. Let's talk about China. Does China still wield any power over Korea, Rachel?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it wields a tremendous amount of power, but also North Korea wields power over China, which is why China hasn't gotten on board with implementing deeper, stronger sanctions that would actually work, and why we also have difficulties with South Korea being able to retaliate against these attacks, because China pressures the country not to retaliate in defense of not bringing more escalation to the crisis, but again, what we see is more attacks. So the real issue is getting China on board with not only UN sanctions, but also implementing sanctions that would stop financial revenue coming in and out of the country across the border.
This is very serious for the whole world, this issue, and obviously an opportunity for these candidates to appear very presidential. What are they saying and who's doing the best job of it?
This might be the only time you'll see Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders echo each other. They're both calling on China to take responsibility here, but perhaps the person with the strongest rhetoric today was Senator Ted Cruz, who said this is kind of looking into the future, what you can expect to see from Iran if we do more of the same. If we issue empty threats and we don't follow through, we can expect to see other countries start to exercise their nuclear rights. And so he got the toughest on the trail today.
How interesting to tie Iran into this after this recent deal. So is there anything that the U.S. could or should do to bring out more meaningful dialogue on this?
Absolutely. And Rubio has, along with other senators and people on the House side as well, introduced legislation to launch better targeted sanctions. What you see now is that we haven't really frozen the assets of top North Korean leaders. We haven't frozen the assets of cyber attackers. We haven't frozen the assets of human rights violators. And we really haven't frozen the assets of Asian companies and banks that are keeping North Korea afloat. So to bring North Korea to the negotiating table, the number one thing we have to do is change North Korea's financial calculus and cut off their opportunities for generating revenue.
Rachel Wagley and Sarah Westwood, thank you both. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. After many failed attempts, Congress finally sends a symbolic bill to the president. Very close to doing that. It defunds Planned Parenthood and dismantles key parts of the Affordable Care Act. Jason Calvi reports from the Capitol tonight.
Brian, the bill already passed the Senate. It's a special once-a-year process called reconciliation. It gets around the usual Senate filibuster. It needs only 51 votes, not the usual 60. And tonight, the House votes.
We are standing for life. We are confronting the president with the hard, honest truth. Obamacare doesn't work.
Republicans say they added the Planned Parenthood defunding because of the videos that came out in July. They allege Planned Parenthood is illegally selling baby body parts. Democrats say the videos are heavily edited.
I'm just wondering if any of you have watched the videos and what deceptions in particular can you point to?
It was supposed to be a legit video. There was ominous music in the background. And it has been affirmed by outside sources that these videos have been doctored.
I've seen snippets, but I've never seen the whole video. but I have certainly researched it and relied upon the analysis, the independent analysis has been done on it.
A Planned Parenthood commissioned study found the videos placed on YouTube edited content out of the alleged full footage videos and heavily edited the short videos so as to misrepresent statements. While another study commissioned by Christian law firm Alliance Defending Freedom reviewed the raw video and found the videos were not manipulated.
We are doing our work. We're going to put it on the president's desk, and then it will be his determination about what he wants to do from that point forward.
It's time for the Republicans to stop showing unhealthy, wasteful bills and stop shoving these wasteful bills down our throats.
And the president has promised a veto. We expect the House to try to override that veto on the day of the March for Life, January 22nd, when pro-lifers from around the country will be here in Washington. Brian?
Thanks, Jason Calvi. Excellent work on Capitol Hill. A professor at a Christian college near Chicago could lose her job over comments that she made about Christians and Muslims. Lauricia Hawkins, a Christian, started wearing an Islamic-style headscarf at Wheaton College where she teaches. Now, administrators say her headscarf is not the issue. It's her comments about certain theological teachings. They're especially concerned about her statement that Christians and Muslims worship the same God. The NRA won't participate in a CNN town hall on gun control. President Obama appears on that network tomorrow night defending his executive action. Now more sellers must register as gun dealers, forcing more buyers to undergo background checks. For the second time this week, stock market investors take a big hit. At today's closing bell, the Dow was off more than 250 points, the Nasdaq down 55 points. Today's sharp drop, combined with Monday's slide, means the Dow has lost nearly 3% of its value in this young new year. Well, more trouble tonight for Chipotle. The restaurant chain now faces a criminal investigation. It's been served with a federal grand jury subpoena. A number of people got sick after eating Chipotle's food. Star Wars The Force Awakens just set another new record. It's now the highest grossing film in North American history at more than $758 million. Worldwide, it's grossed $1.5 billion. Celebrating Christmas around the world. That's right, Christmas. The Greek Orthodox Patriarch of the Holy Land leads a procession today toward Bethlehem's Church of the Nativity. The Orthodox Christian celebration of Christmas is based on the Julian calendar. Orthodox Christians in Serbia also celebrating. They gathered on their Christmas Eve, burning dried oak branches at sermons held outside churches. These branches are part of the Yule log, that's a young tree symbolizing Christ and his entry into the world. Coming up, we take you to Rome for a traditional Epiphany procession and Mass. And other European nations hold celebrations wrapping up this Christmas season. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Brian Patrick, and most American parishes observed the Feast of the Epiphany this past Sunday. But many around the world still celebrate on this traditional date, January 6th, the 12th day of Christmas. In Rome, more than 1,000 players dressed in period costumes portray the Magi arriving to pay homage to the Christ child. Pilgrims are riveted, capturing the colorful images to share with others around the world. Live camels carry the three wise men as the procession makes its way through the streets leading to St. Peter's Square. Inside St. Peter's Basilica, a solemn Pope Francis presides over Mass, reaffirming his call for a missionary church.
Per la Chiesa, essere missionaria equivale ad esprimere la sua stessa natura, cioè essere illuminata da Dio e riflettere la sua luce.
For the church to be missionary means to give expression to her very nature, the Pope says, which is to receive God's light and then to reflect it. This is her service.
Questo è il suo servizio.
And Epiphany celebrations extend beyond Rome and the Vatican. Romanian villagers gather today as a priest blesses horses in a traditional Epiphany ritual. These animals used for plowing, carrying wood, and transportation are essential to village life. They are blessed to ward off disease. People in Greece also celebrating the feast. Archbishop Larymonas blessed the waters near Athens. This annual tradition commemorates Jesus' baptism in the Jordan River. And Orthodox Christians in Bulgaria plunge into icy water, again commemorating the baptism of Jesus. They swim to a crucifix thrown into the water by a priest. Now, their tradition says whoever retrieves the crucifix is freed from troubling evil spirits. The Supreme Court hears a major pro-life case early this year. It is centered around a challenge to the Texas bill requiring safety standards for abortion clinics. We're using Skype to connect with John Seago in Austin, Texas. John is Legislative Director for Texas Right to Life. John, the other side has just completed filing its briefs with the Supreme Court. What's next for the pro-life side in this case, and why are these amicus briefs important in the first place?
Right. Thanks for having me. Yesterday we saw 45 groups on the pro-abortion side filed amicus briefs to the court. Pro-life side has a month to file their response briefs, and this will be interest groups, this will be legislators, this will be experts weighing in on their arguments they hope the court considers in this case. So Texas Right to Life will be filing a brief pointing out some of the issues of why we think the court should uphold this pro-life law, House Bill 2.
So what will the High Court actually be examining when they do take up this case?
Yeah, the main question the Supreme Court will be looking at is whether legislation like House Bill 2 that raises medical standards on the abortion industry, whether those bills, those laws constitute an undue burden on a woman's access to elective abortion. And this is a very important question, but that's the core of this case, is what is the definition of an undue burden and whether we actually violated that with passing our pro-life bill in 2013.
Just the fact that the Supreme Court is hearing this case, John, how does that help the pro-life cause?
Well, it's a historical moment because not only has the Supreme Court not heard a pro-life law in 8 years, but we actually have a lot of effects this could have for other states. So the Supreme Court ruling on what constitutes an undue burden will create a roadmap for other states and the pro-life activists in their states of what pro-life laws they can do to protect preborn children, but also to protect the safety of pregnant women.
We'll be following it closely. We appreciate you. Texas Right to Life Legislative Director John Seago. Thanks for joining us from Austin.
Thanks for having me.
Up next, the Little Sisters of the Poor continue their life of service while entwined in a high-profile legal fight. And the church's challenge of engaging a young generation that takes a negative view of religion. On Wednesday evening, January 6th, the Feast of the Epiphany. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick. A change in attitude toward church. A new Pew Research study claims millennials have grown more negative toward religion in recent years. Catherine Szeltner says many young people don't like the media either.
According to Pew Research, millennials are a pessimistic group. Only 27% view national news media as positive. When it comes to churches, positive rankings dropped 18 points in 5 years.
Millennials are entering adulthood with far lower rates of attachment to religion and Christianity in particular, and far higher levels of religious disaffiliation than their parents and grandparents before them.
While statistics look dim, some attitudes are more bright. Jonathan Lewis directs young adult ministry in the Washington Archdiocese. He says millennials responded with great joy during the U.S. papal trip. We love
There was just great enthusiasm the whole time that he was here in the city, and so many people taking time to really reflect on the writings of Pope Francis, to reflect on his example, his witness, his practices.
But Lewis knows it takes more than a visit from Francis to engage the young church.
It's no longer sufficient to say, well, they should come to Mass. Young people come into a church and they don't see energy and dynamism and a care for the poor and a family environment. We haven't given them a reason to stay.
The Washington Archdiocese is considered active compared with many others in the U.S. Church. Lewis believes the big challenge is getting local parishes to better involve young adults. Brian?
All right, Catherine, and based on your story yesterday, we took our own poll about concussions related to football. I want to thank you for participating. We asked how Catholics should respond to concussion concerns on the football field. 60% of you said don't support the sport until the violent culture in football changes. 40% believe we should continue to participate in football, using it as a tool to evangelize. By the way, you could still vote on our EWTN News Nightly Facebook page. This week, the Little Sisters of the Poor renew their push for Supreme Court protection from $70 million in government fines. Those fines could be imposed for their refusal to provide contraceptives to their employees as mandated by the government. Stephanie Barclay is legal counsel at the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty, which represents the Little Sisters and EWTN, I might add. Stephanie, why did the Little Sisters have to go back again seeking protection from the court? Didn't they get it earlier?
The first time the Little Sisters had to seek protection, it was because the government was trying to impose over $70 million in fines on the Little Sisters per year if they wouldn't violate their Catholic faith before they had even had their day in court. The Supreme Court stepped in and pushed the pause button and said, wait, the Little Sisters get to have their day so that we make sure that their religious rights are protected before you, the government, can move forward with such draconian fines. And it's really extraordinary that the Supreme Court did that, because courts will only jump in a situation like that if there's a strong chance of success in the merits. Now the Supreme Court is hearing the case again to decide whether the Little Sisters will be able to receive final relief once and for all that's going to not only protect their ministry, but all the religious ministries that are before the court.
They're not alone in this. Who are some of the supporters?
That's right. When they first filed their case asking the Supreme Court to hear their plea, there was over 16 other briefs that were filed for them with a wide range of groups, from Orthodox Jewish groups, we had women's groups, we had medical groups, there were legal scholars, and over 20 states. And we expect that this coalition will just continue to grow in coming days, even with EWTN coming in to support the Little Sisters.
And of course, EWTN and many others are challenging this as well. About how many challenges are out there?
That's exactly right. So there are 56 cases total with 140 religious ministries. 7 of those cases are before the Supreme Court, but the court's decision will impact everyone.
So some corporations, even small businesses, are exempt. What's different about these organizations?
Yeah, a lot of corporations and businesses are exempt, even big businesses like Pepsi Bottling, ExxonMobil, and houses of worship are exempt, like the Church of Scientology that has no position on contraception. And what that exemption means is that they don't have to offer plans with drugs and devices that would violate the Little Sisters' beliefs. They have that choice. Houses of worship like the Catholic Church get to offer a plan that reflects their religious beliefs. Remarkably, the government has said the Little Sisters aren't religious enough to get the same treatment as the Church of Scientology, and they're not deserving of the same political favors as big businesses who have been able to get that protection simply because of administrative convenience as a political promise.
They need to visit one of the Little Sisters' beautiful homes, and they'll find the truth.
They really do.
Stephanie Barclay with the Becket Fund, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
We'll have you back. Well, someone could win $500 million tonight. The Powerball jackpot has grown to $500 million. That multi-state lottery originally estimated the top prize tonight would be worth $400 million. Brisk sales made them raise it to $450 and eventually $500 million. By the way, this is the 6th largest jackpot in U.S. history. A Texas couple comes home to a full house after giving birth to rare, identical triplets. Addison, Kinsley, and Savannah were born to Stephanie and Brad Harris on December 1st by C-section. A local TV station reports they've been in the neonatal intensive care unit of a Houston hospital since birth. Dad admits he's now outnumbered at home.
We are prepared. I'm just way outnumbered now. And just it's going to be busy at working and trying to keep up with it all.
The triplets were released from the hospital earlier this week, about a month after their birth. We understand everyone is doing well. Until tomorrow, for the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. We leave you tonight with this Epiphany celebration in Madrid. Good night and God bless.